Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about the impact of free movement along the Indo-Myanmar border on the current situation in Manipur. We also talk about how sports is granting a fresh lease on life to former army personnel who have faced debilitating injuries during service. But first, we talk about Pakistan. Last week, during an interview, a senior Pakistan government functionary corroborated what Indian officials knew to be true for a long time. In an interview to a senior journalist, Malik Muhammad Ahmad Khan, the Special Assistant on Defense, admitted that Pakistani peddlers have been using high-tech and sophisticated means to smuggle narcotics into the country.
क्या बात दुरुस्त नहीं है कि इस इलाके में ड्रोन के जरिए स्मगलिंग भी होती है?
बिल्कुल, और ये बड़ी तशवीशनाक है। अभी रिसेंटली एक दो इंसिडेंट ऐसे हुए हैं जिसपे 10-10 केजी हीरोइन बांध के ड्रोन्स के ऊपर उसको फेंक रहे हैं बाहर। लगी हुई एजेंसीज रोकने के लिए।
फिर इसलिए शायद उन्होंने
This was the first such admission by a senior official, and what's key to note is that this interview had been taking place in the city of Kasur, which borders Punjab, a state which has been reeling with drug problems for many years now. In this segment, the Indian Express's Aman Chhina joins my colleague Shashank Bhargava to talk about it.
Manaman, firstly, tell us, since when has Punjab been dealing with a drug problem?
Shashank, this drug problem in Punjab has very old beginnings, but it has really become a major problem in the past 15 years or so. As we know that we had a very porous border with Pakistan in the early 80s. And then the period of terrorism and militancy came into India, into Punjab, in fact, to be more specific. And then we put up a border fence, which, put a bar to this porous border which existed. But at that point of time, the proliferation was of arms and ammunition. Then there was a period of peace in the 90s and in the early 2000s. It is in the late 2000s that this problem of drug smuggling started to increase. This was with the influx of drugs like heroin, which started making their way into Indian Punjab from Pakistan Punjab. And over the years, it has worsened. So broadly speaking, it is in the past 15 years that this problem has worsened.
And what kind of proof did Indian authorities have that these drugs were coming from across the border, that they were in fact coming from Pakistan?
Well, initially, before the advent of the drone era, there were these packets which were thrown across on the border fence. And usually these used to carry markings on them, which sort of gave away where they had been packed, if you would believe that. This is how it used to happen. And these used to have the markings of Afghanistan on them, which gave credence to the theory that, the drugs were originating from Afghanistan, coming to Pakistan in transit, and then they were further pushed into India. And of course, there were drug smugglers who were caught on both sides, who, when interrogated, they gave out the information that they were smuggling these drugs from Pakistan. And also there has been technical intelligence, there has been human intelligence. The intelligence agencies have been working to find out the connection. And gradually it came to be known that there was a narco-terror nexus which existed in Punjab and which was being perpetuated by ISI, the intelligence agency of Pakistan.
And Manaman, could you tell our listeners what perhaps is the reason that a country like Pakistan would choose to do this?
So the basic premise behind Pakistan attempting to do any such activity like this by pushing drugs into India and arms and ammunition through drones is to destabilize the country. When you push in drugs, which is available at a far cheaper rate than the market rate, then you are encouraging drug smugglers here in India to sell those drugs, and thereby you are helping to perpetuate the problem of drug addiction. Now, as we know, that in the recent years, and like I said, in the past 15 years, this problem has grown more serious. Punjab has seen a large number of youth fall prey to drug addiction, and mostly it is because of the easy availability of drugs. Though the bulk of the drugs which are pushed in by Pakistan, they go out of Punjab, but a certain percentage stays in Punjab and it is used to sort of, you see, it's a voluntary thing, anybody becoming a drug addict. But once, they are caught into the habit, it's very difficult to get away with it. And that sort of destabilizes your country. That destabilizes the youth of your country and makes them less productive. And in the long run, it serves the aim of the inimical intelligence agencies to destabilize the country.
Right, and now we have a statement by a senior Pakistan government functionary confirming that these drugs are in fact being poured from across the border. What stood out to you about Malik Khan's statement?
It is a known fact now for past 3 or 4 years that the drones are being used extensively in Punjab to push drugs. The advent of technology aids these drug smugglers, and it is much easier to use a drone to ferry these drugs instead of throwing them across or using pipes or using various other means or surreptitiously put them on cargo trucks. So this is a very easy and a very quick method of doing it. Drones have been spotted on the border carrying cargo from Pakistan into India. Drones have been shot down by the BSF. Drones have been neutralized on the Indo-Pak border using anti-drone technology by the BSF. Now, what makes this important is that this is the first time that somebody who's very high up in the Pakistan government has actually admitted that this is happening. Of course, India has been presenting irrefutable evidence to Pakistan that their intelligence agencies or their drug smugglers were involved in pushing drugs into India. But no official admission had been made till this interview, which was given by the senior functionary Malik Muhammad Ahmed Khan to the Pakistani journalist Hamid Mir, that yes, drones are being used from Pakistan Punjab to push drugs into Indian Punjab. Therefore, it is quite significant.
And what sort of prompted Hamid Mir, this senior journalist, to ask this question?
Yeah, this is exactly what I asked Mr. Hamid Mir, who's a very senior journalist, television journalist in Pakistan. He said he had gone into that area to do coverage of the flood-affected areas on the Indo-Pak border. So as you know, Punjab in India also has been facing a problem of floods, and the same problem exists in the Pakistan Punjab also. He says while he was going around those border villages, he came across many complaints from the villagers that there were no mobile phone signals available in their area, which made their life very difficult in this era when mobile signals are a lifeline. So he said when he inquired further, the villagers said that the mobile signals are disrupted by their intelligence agencies because drones are being used to smuggle drugs from Pakistan into India, and that these drones use SIM card signals from Indian SIMs as well as Pakistani SIMs. So therefore, they do not have any mobile signal there. So when he posed this question to the member of provincial assembly, it is akin to an Indian MLA, a member of a legislative assembly. So the member of the provincial assembly of Pakistani Punjab, who represents that area of Kasur. So Malik Muhammad Ahmed Khan is that MPA, and he's also the special assistant on defense to the Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. So he says since this MPA was also in that same area, he posed this question to him as to why the area does not have mobile signals, and also whether he was aware that there is a problem of narcotic smuggling on the border. This is when this person, Mr. Malik, he admitted that there was a problem of drones being used to push drugs into India. And he says this is why the Pakistan Rangers and the other security agencies shut down mobile signals when they find out any such activity taking place.
And Manaman, right now, do we know how much drugs come into Pakistan from across the border?
Well, the quantity, of course, varies, but in one load, a drone can carry almost 10 kgs of heroin. Now, we also have to remember that often one load of heroin is also includes one Chinese pistol and some rounds of ammunition. Sometimes some grenades also accompany these drugs. Often, instead of drugs, there are arms and ammunitions like AK-47 rifles, AK-56 rifles, automatic pistols, grenades. These kind of things are also dropped by the drones. So it is a two-pronged attack on India. Like I said, it is a narco-terror kind of a situation which exists here. So these drones are also used to push drugs and also used to push arms and ammunition. But typically in one load, agriculture level drone, which is also called a hexacopter, that can carry about 10 kgs of heroin across in one go.
And what kind of measures would you say has the government taken in the past to stop this from happening?
Well, for a long time, Shashank, there was no technology available to neutralize these drones, except when you spotted them, you tried to shoot them out of the air. That is, of course, very extremely difficult because these are very small targets when they're flying very high above. And of course, most of these activities take place at night. So at night, there's only the noise of the drone which can be heard and they can hardly be seen. But the BSF had been trying to shoot them down, and also it had some success in doing that. However, lately, we have learned from our sources that anti-drone technology is available in certain sectors, and it is selectively being used wherever there are intelligence inputs that a drone activity from Pakistan may take place in that area. So this anti-drone technology is deployed, which disrupts the signal between the drone and the base unit, and therefore it brings that drone down into the Indian territory.
And next we discuss how free movement along the Indo-Myanmar border has impacted the current situation in Manipur. The northeastern state has been grappling with ongoing violence since the 3rd of May, marked by clashes between its two key communities, the Métis and the Kuki tribes. The immediate reason for the clashes is said to be the fact that the Métis, which is the dominant tribe in the region, wanted to be included in the state ST list, which the Kukis opposed. However, it's important to note that tensions have been simmering in Manipur for the past year, with both communities taking opposing stands on multiple issues. And one of the significant issues contributing to this tension is the free movement regime along the India-Myanmar border. To understand what this regime entails and the kind of impact it has had on the Manipur crisis, my colleague Utsa Sarmin speaks to the Indian Express's Deeptiman Tiwary in this segment.
So Deeptiman, can you first explain to us what is the free movement regime along the Indo-Myanmar border?
Free movement regime is basically a mutually agreed system between India and Myanmar, where the tribal populations living near the border on either side of the border, that is in India and Myanmar, can go up to 16 kilometers inside the other territory, that is in the territory of the other country, without requiring a visa. So this is sort of a visa-free movement for 16 kilometers. This is essentially the free movement regime, what it means. Basically, it facilitates trade and, inter-people exchanges, and people go here and there for education, healthcare, etc. And basically, it improves diplomatic relations between two countries.
Right, and the government implemented the FMR in 2018. So what exactly were the arguments behind implementing it?
Look, actually, FMR had been under discussion between India and Myanmar for some time before it was implemented. In fact, it was thought of in 2017 also, but it was deferred because of the Rohingya crisis. Then in 2018, it was finally put in place. This happened at a time when the diplomatic relations between India and Myanmar were on an upswing. And so, whenever such conditions are there between two countries, especially in the regional context, countries generally try to, make these people-to-people contacts more possible, because it creates some sort of a soft power influence where if people of two countries like each other, obviously the two countries will have better relations. Also, it coalesced with Narendra Modi government's Act East policy, where, greater regional engagement was supposed to be done. And so this was thought of. Of course, it was also essential because, the Indo-Myanmar border was actually drawn by the British in 1826. And basically it was drawn on a map without taking consent of the people or seeking their opinion. Now, what happened that because of this border which was drawn, people of the same ethnicity, same culture, almost similar language were suddenly split into two nations. And if you forcibly separate two people from the same culture or ethnicity, they will want to go towards each other because they have family ties. So since this was already happening, so that is why the two countries decided that it would be better to have a free movement regime which would actually facilitate this, and then people would not have to do illegal things or illegally cross the border and then get caught for no fault of theirs under a passport act. So those kind of things, these were some of the reasons because of which. Also, at the back of the mind was facilitating trade, because, when two nations are looking at getting their relations on an upswing, trade is one of the best ways. And according to the Act East policy, there was a Asian highway also being built that would go from Thailand and, northeastern Myanmar up to China. So all of this was interconnected. And it was in this context that FMR was actually put in place.
But these movements have raised multiple concerns over the years, especially related to drug trafficking and illegal immigration, right?
Yes. Actually, both illegal immigration and drug trafficking have been a huge problem on the Indo-Myanmar border. In fact, a maximum number of synthetic drugs, which have become the new thing in the drug market beyond heroin and cocaine, are actually traded through the Indo-Myanmar border. And this is a huge concern both for the security of the country and obviously, when such movement of drugs takes place, the local population gets involved and, your entire generation goes for a toss. So this is a big concern. It has been happening for a long time. Free movement regime has only helped it because you can already go 16 kilometers inside without being questioned. And so it is probably easier to get diffused into the population. So both as an illegal immigrant, you can just come and cross a checkpoint without being questioned and then just disappear. And it becomes very difficult to locate you. And there have been massive seizure of drugs on Indo-Myanmar border in the past few years. There have also been reports of massive illegal immigration, especially since there has been a military coup in Myanmar since February 2021, because the military coup has actually started persecuting Kukichin peoples in these border areas, and they have had to flee their homes and, just like Rohingyas, come to bordering nations.
And could you tell us the kind of impact these free movements along the border have had on the current situation in Manipur?
Yes, actually, in fact, the entire trouble in Manipur has been brewing for the past 1 year, and it has got a lot to do with the issue of illegal immigration and poppy cultivation. So the N. Biren Singh government has accused the hill tribes of being hand in glove with, these drug traffickers and actually engaging in poppy cultivation, which has led to deforestation. At the same time, N. Biren Singh government has accused that, a lot of illegal immigrants since the military coup in Myanmar have entered Manipur illegally, and they have been settled by creating new villages by Kuki village chiefs. And they are not actually informing the government that these are illegal immigrants, and they are being shown as genuine residents of the place. And so the government also started an eviction drive in this regard in February this year. This eviction drive turned violent, and since then there has been constant clashes between the government and Kuki people. And since May 3, there has been a clash between the Meitei population and Kuki population, which has led to more than 150 deaths.
Okay, and how have the Kuki people reacted to these allegations?
So basically, while Kukis do agree that illegal immigration has happened because people are coming, they are being persecuted in Myanmar and they're fleeing, and because they have ethnic similarities here, so they are coming. But they're saying that this entire problem has been blown out of proportion and is being used by the N. Biren Singh government to actually persecute Kukis itself. Genuine Kukis who have been living in Manipur for centuries, they are being persecuted, and this is basically a ploy for ethnic cleansing in the state. And they have been saying that N. Biren Singh is basically targeting Kukis and he is only batting for Meiteis. So this is how this entire problem has actually precipitated in Manipur, and that is why Kukis say that we have lost all trust in N. Biren Singh government.
And Deeptiman, considering the complexity of the situation, do we know if there is any conversation happening about restricting this free movement along this border?
See, in fact, the FMR remains suspended since September 2022 in view of large swathes of illegal immigrants coming from Myanmar because of the persecution happening there. And there is also a talk within the ministry of how it should be regulated. It has always been a concern, but once again it is being debated that this has now also become a political issue in Manipur, and Meitei say that, this FMR needs to be reviewed. So that is indeed actually under review, but it remains to be seen as to how this is going to be regulated, because completely withdrawing it is not exactly an option that the center is considering, because FMR is also beneficial to the local people. It helps sustain livelihoods in border areas where people actually live in low-income economy system. So it is beneficial to the local people. It improves diplomatic relations between India and Myanmar, and also improves people-to-people relations because people are the same, ethnicity and culture. So it is not being thought of to completely remove it, but somehow regulate it. Although it's easier said than done, because the entire Indo-Myanmar border is almost completely unfenced. In fact, in Manipur, there is less than 6 kilometers of fence. So how do you regulate incoming and outgoing of people with a few checkposts and, large swathes of land which is totally unregulated? You cannot have so much of manpower on such a long border, which is more than 1,600 kilometers long. And the terrain is also difficult. There are jungles, there are hills, mountains. So it's easier said than done. But I'm sure some or the other solution will have to be worked out.
And in the end, we talk about how former army personnel who have suffered debilitating injuries while being on duty are now finding new purpose in life through sports. Back in 2013, a young soldier named Someshwara Rao was deployed in Uri, a small town which lies near the line of control between India and Pakistan in northern Kashmir and has often witnessed attacks and attempted infiltrations from Pakistan. And one day while on duty, Rao underwent a traumatic experience which changed his life forever. When we spoke to the Indian Express's Andrew Amsan, he told us what happened to Rao back in 2013.
What had happened was they had this line mine blast at night at pitch dark 10 p.m. So immediately their commanding officer called them and said, just go and check there. And they went there at the night and they did a search operation. So they tried to find out what happened but couldn't. So next morning, again, they went back. And unfortunately, he stepped on a landmine and lost his left limb below the knee.
After that incident, Rao was taken off duty. Overwhelmed by the trauma, he even contemplated ending his life while he was recovering. In fact, Andrew recalls that on one particular day, he was about to act on it, but a phone call from his mother at that exact moment saved his life. And although Rao did not make a similar attempt again, he fell into a severe bout of depression.
You can imagine this is someone who was in the best shape possible. He was inducted into the Ghatak platoon, which is an elite platoon, and only the best of the best are taken into it. And now he has lost a part of his body and probably not easy to take.
But Rao's life took a turn when he met Lieutenant Colonel Gaurav Datta, an army para-triathlete at the Artificial Limb Center in Pune.
So they have this artificial limb center in Pune where the soldiers are provided prosthetic limbs, etc. So he was there one day and by chance he ran into Lieutenant Colonel Gaurav Datta, who has been a triathlete himself and has promoted para sports in the army a lot. So he just ran into Gaurav Datta and Gaurav Datta said, why don't you try sports? And he had no clue about sports at all. For them, army meant just serving on the border or other normal duties. But they didn't know there was a provision for sports as well. So Major Gaurav Datta introduced him to sports. This was probably 2 years later in 2015. And then he initially started off as a sprinter, but then later on, he had some stress fracture issues on the other leg. So he's now switched to long jump.
And his newfound purpose led him to represent India in the upcoming Para-Asian Games at Hangzhou. In fact, Andrew says that Someshwara's mental health also improved significantly, who, as we mentioned earlier, was dealing with severe depression.
Now you have this very pleasing personality. He's willing to talk to you. He's happy. He always has a smile on his face. And he was also a very big cricket fan. So he said when he started sports, all he wanted to do was like maybe get a photograph with Kapil Dev or some big cricketer. But now, right, he's won awards. He stood next to Virat Kohli at a podium for awards. I asked a silly question like, did you go for a picture? He said, no, why should I go for a picture? They come and take pictures with me. So that's the transformation we are actually talking about.
Now, Someshwara is not the only one whose life changed because of sports. Ajay Kumar, a soldier from the 12th Dogra Regiment, had experienced a similar tragedy. In 2017, he lost his limb in a landmine explosion during his service in the Uri sector. After the incident, Kumar was given an administrative post, which he did not enjoy. And just like Rao, he too found a new lease on life through sports. And Andrew says this is because of Lieutenant Colonel Gaurav Datta, who has been instrumental in helping these young soldiers, and who himself survived a landmine blast in 2001.
So after that, he tried sports, he did triathlon. He also probably discovered this new pursuit towards happiness in sports. So he wanted to share this with other athletes. So while he was, in fact, admitted at the hospital recovering, it wasn't him alone. He said there were 8 other young army soldiers lying next to him who had lost limbs or who are recovering from injuries at the center. So he wanted to help other athletes as well. So he pushed for a separate section in the army, or separate nod as they call the Paralympic Army nod in Pune, which was at the same center as the Artificial Limb Center. So initially Gaurav Datta would just meet all the athletes who would come there for help or who would come there for get their prosthetics done. So his basic criteria to join the Paralympic nod was very simple. All they had to do was beat him in a sprints race, beat him in a swimming race, and certain physical tests. Because anyways, he was 10 years elder to all the athletes there or all the soldiers who would come there. So you beat him, you get into the nod. And then, as Gaurav Datta told me, the biggest thing was to motivate these athletes, because obviously they were broken, they were shattered, they had dreams of, doing big in the army, but then they just see this is a dead end for them, because once you're injured, obviously you're taken off duty from war zones or from critical zones, and you're probably given administrative postings. And these soldiers really don't enjoy it. But now with sports, they probably find that competitive edge. So Lieutenant Colonel Datta and Army's contribution has been immense. So right now, from this very center, the Paralympic Army Nod, 8 athletes are going to represent Para-Asian Games soon.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and was written and produced by Utsa, Sarmin and Shashank Bhargava. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.